Good morning and welcome to SimWorld today on this Monday morning post-opening day of SWFL. I am Marsh, joined by Rick Blaze. Good morning, Rick. How are you?
Damn it, football is back, baby. It's a beautiful morning. The Texans won. Let's get started.
We got a couple football topics. We're going to talk a little bit of basketball, and we got a special guest to round things out. But you said it first. Football is back. Let's start there. Week one, SWFL, pretty much in the books outside of our Monday night game tonight. Rick, your takeaway from take this wherever you want. Whatever team, I have a feeling where you're going to go with it, but take this where you want with what was an entertaining, especially the 1 o'clock slate of games.
Yep. Hey, first thing I want to highlight is there was a lot of bad quarterback play on yesterday from a lot of teams. And some veteran QBs as well. So that was interesting to see. I know there was a few people that argued with me a few weeks ago about how Kirk Cousins is going to be the quarterback for the Falcons. He didn't look that great yesterday, that's for sure. Penix is loading up. Justin Fields with the win going to Atlanta. I think he gets another week to kind of see what he can do. It just may be his job to take from this point forward. The Texans looking really, really good, baby. Get the job done. And of course, beating a division opponent. Of course, I got to say, your guys started off really, really hot, and then Jags did Jaguar things and dropped it late. So yeah, an exciting week overall for sure.
The Jags' point, their offensive play calling has been suspect for the last, I would say, 2 years. That did not change when ETN had the ball, which was a great defensive play, fumbled out the back of
Yeah.
the end, or essentially out the back of the end zone. I think they ran three pass plays the rest of the way. Two of them ended up in sacks. The Jags do not have a good offensive line. They did not have a good offensive line last year. They did not have a good secondary last year. Both of those things got exposed in their opener. I thought their front seven was good, but they were running away with that thing until just all momentum ceased to exist after the fumble, and then right after it, the 80-yard touchdown from Tyreek Hill, and then they
Yeah.
fumbled on the ensuing kickoff. So just a terrible sequence of events, but I play calling was rough there. To me, the biggest takeaway was Cleveland. I mean, Cleveland looked absolutely atrocious last night or yesterday afternoon. Will you against the Cowboys? The Cowboys looked. It's one of those matchups where I don't know if the Cowboys looked great, if the Browns looked terrible, or if there's some semblance of truth in both of those
Yeah.
statements. But Njoku might be out with a high ankle sprain for Cleveland. That's not good news for a Cleveland team that apparently has a ghost of a quarterback. It continues to amaze me that Deshaun Watson is what Deshaun Watson is right now, because he was in Houston a top five quarterback, and all of that is gone. And it's not that I don't think this team is all that talented, because I think it is. I think there's a lot of talent in Cleveland. It just feels weird that this is the version that we get of Deshaun Watson, right?
Yeah, and who you telling? This is a guy who just lives in Houston. Deshaun was my quarterback, and this guy in Cleveland, I do not recognize. I think what happened to him with the whole scandal situation, I think mentally it changed him, and I don't think he may not ever fully recover from that mentally. And I think people estimate how much the mind controls the body, right? So I don't think you ever get that version of Deshaun Watson ever again, unfortunately. Also, want to highlight a lot of rookie QBs who look like world beaters in the preseason came crashing down to earth when all the starters played for 4 quarters and you got to see some real defense and not that vanilla shell they was playing through the preseason. So everybody who had their rookie quarterbacks going to break CJ Stroud's record and all that, pump the brakes. There's only one CJ Stroud. These other guys got a lot of learning curve to do for their teams.
Yeah, Bears get the win despite having 149 yards of total
Crazy.
offense, a game they probably should have lost. And then you mentioned the Steelers and the Falcons. That was if I'm Pittsburgh, I'm not walking out of there all that exciting. The fact that we had to get 6 Chris Boswell field goals, I think 3 of them were 50 yards or more.
Yes.
Justin Fields ended up with 156 total yards. The reason they won that game is number 90. TJ Watt was absolutely disruptive. He had one fumble forced overturned by a penalty that was kind of not sure if that was legitimately a penalty, but the Steelers, they didn't look good, but the Falcons looked somehow even worse. So we'll keep an eye on what happens there because the Falcons certainly have the weapons for it. But Drake London, no show. Bijan
Nope.
Robinson was good. Kyle Pitts was fine, but not getting anything out of Drake London and the atrocity that was Kirk Cousins. Not a great start. Let's head to college football, where 2 pretty notable games went down. Michigan and Texas, the first one, and then the second one, which we might not have expected to be there as well, up in the Midwest. But let's start with Texas, Michigan, where Texas put the hurt on the reigning national champions, 31-12. Quinn Ewers, 3 touchdowns. This game was never competitive. It was never close. It was entertaining to just see the dominance of Texas, but my goodness, Michigan is a shell of who they used to be on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, I mean, Texas took them behind the shed and just whooped that ass. I mean, it's from the word go, they just trounced on them. And you have to remember now, Texas lost some of their top 5, some of their top players earlier this season before the season started with the running back. So they're not even
Mhm.
playing with their number one guys in a few positions. And they just really show that there's a big difference, at least on Saturday, between the number 3 team and the number 10 team in the country. So I expect Texas to come in number 1 ranked at the end of, by the way, had the win on Saturday. I don't know if you agree with that, Marsh. Yeah, number 1 ranked Texas.
Um, Look, I think the top. I don't think you're. I'm not taking anyone over Georgia right now. I guess is the point I'm making.
Georgia looks fantastic. I agree. I agree.
Georgia beat the living daylights out of Clemson, who then shows up and blows out Appalachian State. So it's kind of tough to say like who's Clemson, but Georgia's dynamic. Georgia's dominant. The challenge is that we're so early in the season. It's tough to really get an idea of who these teams are. We talked about it on Friday, where it was like the loser of this game, this Texas Michigan game. Maybe they don't end up being that disrupted by it because it's a 12-team playoff. I'll tell you what, I think Michigan might actually be disrupted by it because they did not look good. And
At
unless this
all.
becomes an anomaly on the Wolverine schedule and they've got a tough one to go with just a refurbished Big Ten that's loaded with star teams, I don't know that it makes life any easier for them. Speaking of that, Notre Dame also got stunned at home by
Ooh.
NIU. Northern Illinois beats them 16-14. I think it's safe to rule out Notre Dame from the playoff because that's just a this
You
isn't
can't you
a
can't lose
tie-breaking
that game.
loss.
Yeah, you can't lose
You
that
can't
game.
lose that game,
You
and you
can't
can
lose
win
that
out the
game.
rest of the way. But if I'm looking at a team that's let's make some hypotheses or not some hypotheses. Let's pretend. Let's create some situations. Let's say USC is 10-2 in the Big Ten, and they're sitting there. They don't win the Big Ten title because Ohio State wins it, and they're
Hmm.
sitting at number 11 and or maybe 12, and Notre Dame is sitting at 12 or 13. You're not taking Notre Dame over any of these other Power Five teams that took
Nope.
care of business against lower opponents. Even Michigan,
Yes.
who loses big at home, if they end up with the same schedule, the same record, I'd take Michigan because at least Michigan didn't lose to Northern Illinois at home, and they lost to maybe the number 1 team in the country.
At home, you cannot lose that game to a lower seed. Can you imagine paying someone to come to your team so that you can beat them down like a drum and then losing said team that you paid to come that you're supposed to beat
Michigan
down?
does.
That's a terrible, terrible, terrible scenario if you're Notre Dame. I don't know I don't even know how you, as the coach, you got to be on the hot seat like immediately after that game, right? Like you just got
I mean,
there
he
and
is.
you got to be on the hot seat after that.
I think it's Marcus Freeman. He's entering year 3, I believe, and yeah, there's no doubt about it. He is on the hot seat for a team that started at number 5, and then beat I think it was Oklahoma or Oklahoma State on the road to kick the season off. This goes backwards when you lose to Northern Illinois. All right, let's head to
100%.
the hardcore. There we go. Where last week SimWorld TV put out their inaugural top 10 mock draft. They have Jamison Johnson going first overall to the Pistons, Cooper King Cross to the Wizards, and D. Woodley to the Hornets at number 3. Rick, what stood out? Anything of note in that top 10 that you, again, very preliminary. We haven't even played a game of basketball yet, but what are your immediate thoughts?
Right. You know what? Overall, I'm really, I love to find comb. I love to find tools. I love to. Overall, I'm not bad at it. I'm not mad at the list. You got Jamison Johnson number 1. I think he's the guy with the highest floor out of all the guys. I think if you just his worst career numbers on the next level is probably at least a 10-10. That he's that kind of player, right? And then you got D. Willie, who I've seen his workouts this preseason, and I've seen his scrimmages, and he's unguardable. D. Woodley is unguardable, especially on the ISO. So I'm not mad at that. You got D. Woodley, you got your McLemore, I'm not mad. I like the list. I don't really have anything. Of course, I'm a DJ Childs fan who's going through some injuries right now. He's probably going to be one of those guys who's going to probably range up and down between top 7 all the way to maybe top 12, right? He's going to go between 7 and 12. He's probably going to go up and down. I think it's going to be important to see what the team needs, right? So as the draft maybe shuffles based on winnings from these teams, we'll see maybe different guys that different teams may need. But Jamison Johnson, number 1, to me is a slam dunk pick, no matter what team it is.
I think Tyson Simpson falling to number 6 to me is perhaps the largest question mark. I know he's coming off an injury, torn ACL, but that's in today's world is much easier to come back to than it was even 5 years ago, 10 years ago. Tyson Simpson, I think we've forgotten just how dominant he was in high school, and he was had the chance to be dominant, but was really a detriment to the situation that he was in Virginia. And so I think that we're kind of getting that maybe lack of seeing him is definitely impacting where he sits in these mock drafts because he is not, in my opinion, the 6th best prospect. One thing that's just kind of
You think it's higher or lower?
I think he should be higher than that. I mean, he was unstoppable. He was on par with Jamison Johnson at times in high school. I think he's a top 5 talent. Now he's at 6, so he's just outside of that. But I think he's top 5 with a maybe more likely to be top 3. But we're just not going to see him. We're not going to see him in college, and I think we're going to see a lot of these SWBA teams be very hesitant to go after guys that haven't been productive in college or haven't played in college, particularly after the James Wiseman experience, where he did the exact same thing that Jamison Johnson, Tyson Simpson did, dominated in high school, and rather Johnny Baldwin goes to college, doesn't play a lot, and if that's going to be what we are going off of, that's a little difficult to see the future.
I will say this: I don't like I do not like the M'Baku at number 9. I will say that I think we're still drafting him based off of talent, but he hasn't really. I haven't seen. I don't look at M'Baku as far as his product on what he's put on the college level and say, "Oh yeah, this is a top 10 guy for sure."
We're drafting him off of talent. That's what we should be drafting him off of talent, right?
But at some point, talent and actual results have to align. They haven't quite aligned for me for M'Baku.
All right, well, what's aligning in SimWorld Prep is the upstart SimWorld Atlantis led by Coach Kousa, who joins SimWorld today right now. Good morning, Coach. How are you?
Thanks, guys. How are you?
We're great. Look, Coach, appreciate you taking the time to join us here. I guess it's probably a little bit later in the day for you overseas. But recruitment period in the rearview mirror. What's your immediate takeaway here of this SimWorld Atlantis roster that you've compiled?
First of all, it's been a very good recruiting period, in my opinion. It started out slow during the season. I was a bit worried will we get the type of talent, what kind of budget we will get. But in the end, we were able to amass some amazing talent from in region. We were able to get some out of region guys who are just amazing talents. And also, they complement each other and the guys we already had on the rosters very well. So I'm very excited for the upcoming year.
Coach, I wanted to ask you first of all, good morning on my end. I might be good afternoon on your end, but uh, based on the team, your team did really good last season, and I just want to know, based on some of the things you feel that some needs you needed to address in the off season, how did you think you did as far as addressing those, and what do you expect your team to do this season in prep basketball?
I think in general, like going season to season, it's very hard at the prep level to like look at what you did good, look at what you did bad the year prior, and try to improve on those things. Because at least for us at Atlantis, we need to kind of go with the flow, go with the guys that they're just is available. Like we can't really build on specific styles or anything. So there hasn't been much of that. I think like prepping, just keeping in mind for myself that when we get to those high pressure situations, that the guys are ready and we are there focused. Because I think that was what cost us at the end of last year.
Coach, the SimWorld Prep circuit is switching back to the tournament format from the regular season. Everybody has 4 tournaments that they'll appear in, all 16 round robins, which means that you're playing guaranteed to play pretty much just 2 games in each tournament. That ramps up the importance of every single game, right? It ramps up the fact that if you don't do well, because everything's based off of points won, you don't have quite the runway or the margin for error that you would have a year ago, where it was a 30 game regular season. Is that a good thing? Is that something you're a little nervous about? How are you guys embracing that? What's your thoughts on just the magnitude of games starting to matter quite a bit more?
I think it's a double-edged sword. Like, of course, now we have much better like travel plans. We can plan much better. We last year we had some crazy travels where we ended the game evening in the States, and the next noon we are playing back in England, which is like mad. There was just a fly over in between. Um, but yeah, we get more time to prepare, more time to maybe look at who we are facing off against. And I think that we will see more coaches giving your guys a chance to show, because there isn't like that. Last year we had 30 games. Of course, it was
Hmm.
you were able much easier to pick out who is performing, who is not. So now you kind of just need to give everyone a chance, and then when we get to the postseason, that's when you are going to with your top dogs. But playing 8 games minimum, what 12 games max. It's just not
Pretty much.
enough to really see uh, and like do in season adjustments on your rotations and uh, w- just like see who is doing good and wait for the postseason to do that.
Coach, really quick, I want to talk about legacy. Um, where do you think you fit here in the hierarchy of coaches as far as a SimWorld Prep legacy and coaches, or do you even think about those things at all as far as coaches and where you kind of stand as far as the top coaches in prep basketball?
Yes, it's one of those things that you think about, and when people are doing those rankings, and when I think of the ranking, I want to leave myself out of it when I'm thinking in my own head. But of course, I've got a place in mind. I mean, I'm one of the most longest tenured coaches in the league. I experience in multiple different situations, and I think I've got the most like I've shown the most working with the least, if you get what I mean. Like I've never been at a situation with a huge budget in a place where we can just get anyone we want. But I think I've shown that I've I can coach a team, I can improve the players and push them forward in their careers. So I want to think that I'm one of the top coaches out there, but for exact spot, I don't want to do that.
Well, Coach, appreciate you taking the time. Certainly high on my personal rankings list. Love what you've done, whether that was in St. Louis or now over in Atlantis. I think you're spot on. Although you might argue Tyson Simpson would mean you're working with a little bit, but and Glory Tate before him, but none the same. SimWorld Atlantis, what you did last season was impressive, and we look forward to seeing what the upcoming season has for your squad. So thanks for taking the time. We look forward to talking to you soon and seeing you guys on the floor here in about a month's time over in Europe. Thanks a lot, Coach.
Thanks, Coach.
Thank you guys.
All right,
Always a pleasure.
That is our show, September 9th. We're wrapped up. We're coming back tomorrow. Some Monday Night Football in the docket for us. Niners and Jets. We'll see if Aaron Rodgers can last more than 4 plays this
Thank
season.
you, please.
That would be we'll find out tonight at whatever 8:30 Eastern. So Rick, thanks for joining. Coach Kousa, appreciate him coming on as well. That is our show. We'll be back tomorrow here on SimWorld Today on SimWorld TV, the only place you can see the game, be the game.